Hello friends, it is Not a Spy, and we are here back with a game I recorded forever ago. One of my favorite games ever, Total War Warhammer. Now the reason we're coming back to this is a friend of mine recently purchased this, and so I'm going to be uploading 3 videos today. One of which is the tutorial, and then the other 2 is a play-by-play battle cast of a couple games he and I did the other day. So first, this is just going to be a simple tutorial. More on army compositions and what stats mean, and just the game itself. So first things first, we'll just show off kind of what the game is. There's campaign mode. There's 3 variations of the campaign mode. These mini campaigns, you play a specific faction, either the Beastmen or the Wood Elves, with a specific goal in mind. Then you have the Old World Grand campaign, which is a huge map, tons and tons and tons of factions all over the place, and a lot of fun and different ways you can play. I have all the downloadable content. Oh, Beastman. Oh, that's probably an update soon. Free content available. I have that too. I have all these. I have all of this. I have all of this. Why? Anyway, so the factions of the game, and you pick a faction. Each faction has a different story and what you're trying to accomplish, everything like that, while interacting with the other factions, and we'll break those down a little bit. The other gameplay mode is there's quest battles and free battles where it's just you versus the AI, and quest battles is a story-driven like event in the history of Warhammer of just different characters going out and completing quests. So that being said, I think I've completed quests for fucking no one. Balthazar Gelt, probably when the game first came out. Grimgore, I know I've done a lot for. I've done all but both his blood. Yep, okay. That's fine. So let's break this down a little more. So in this game, it's essentially an RTS, but it's more tactics driven, because you're not worried about managing resources or building structures to like macro or anything like that. In this, it's simply kill your opponent. There's a morale system, so you either win by killing all your opponent's units or driving their morale so low that they run off the battlefield. So when you play a game of Warhammer, the first thing you want to notice when you get into an online match is you want to look over the right hand side. You want to see what your map is. This is just the art for the map, which, yeah, it's cool to look at it. The more important part is, whenever that fucking loads, is the layout of the map. So you have an idea of what you're looking for. Like here, there's a lot of trees, so missile units will be a bit of a disadvantage, except for in this clearing here. So on and so forth. The next step is to look at the factions. That is a lot of factions. It may look like a lot, but honestly it's not too bad. Currently there's only 7 in the game, about to be 8, and then 4 more added in September with the sequel, but a lot of neat content. There are the Wood Elves, the Beastmen, Britonia, the Dwarfs, the Greenskins, the Empire, the Vampire Counts, and the Warriors of Chaos. Now, each faction has its own strengths and weaknesses, and then you also have these secondary factions that have unique units and leaders and lords and generals and all that kind of stuff, but they're part of the same. Like Clan Ungren is a dwarf, so they have the same general units available to them, typically the same tactics. Same with Midland and the Empire, Bordeloo and Carcassonne with Britonia, Warherd of the Shadowgrave and Beastmen, etc., etc. I go on all day. So let's kind of take it a step further and break down what these factions do well. First, you have the Beastmen. Beastmen are, well, I could talk about lore all day. We can talk about lore with all these units. I could do a whole series just discussing lore, but I'd rather just talk the game itself. Well, we gotta discuss more the battle itself. There's just quick note. There's magic. There's units. It's an RTS with magic. I guess is kind of weird to say. Beastmen are a very much in your face, rush down. You mess with the bull, you get the wiener kind of army, and that I absolutely love them. They're my second favorite faction to play in the game. They have minotaurs. They have a lot of monstrous units, and they don't fuck around. They rush in and they get it done. Next faction is Bretonia. Bretonia is a cavalry heavy faction. They have a lot of cavalry variations. Their infantry are good. Their infantry can hold a line. This faction is the living embodiment of Hammer and Anvil, where you keep the infantry alive. They just sit still and they take the punishment, so your cavalry can position and kill whatever's in their way. Next is the dwarfs. Dwarfs, all armored, very strong units, have a lot of health, a lot of armor, can take a lot of damage. Their melee units can't deal a lot of damage, but they just have a lot of lasting power, and their missile infantry and artillery is where a lot of their damage comes from, and just their lasting power. They can outlast most armies. Greenskins are similar to Beastmen. They don't have as many monstrous units. They have more cavalry options, more missile options, and a better infantry corps in my opinion. Greenskins are my favorite faction. Orcs are my favorite fantasy race ever because of Warhammer. Next is the Empire. They're a jack of all trades faction. They have a lot of cavalry. They have a lot of artillery. They don't have monstrous infantry because they're just humans. They have a solid infantry corps. They have access to every school of, well, not every, but at least 4 schools of magic right there, which is really good because most factions only get access to 2. Like here, it's the Lore of Death. Oh fuck no, these guys no Death Shadows and Wild. Death Shadows and Wild. Bretonia has Beasts, Life and Heavens. Dwarves, they don't have magic. They have runes, which is better than magic in my opinion because it's just cooldowns instead of having to maintain mana. But yeah, Empire's kind of jack of all trades. You need a roll filled, they'll take care of it. Actually, they have 5 because Balthasar Gelt, he has Lore of Metal. And then that's Wild, Heavens, or no, that's Heavens, Light, Fire. Okay. Vampire Counts are a unique faction. In one, they don't have, their morale works different. They don't flee, they're zombies and whatever, instead they crumble. And so when they lose morale, they're crumbling, the magic's becoming weaker. They are an army that consists nothing, they do not have any ranged or missile units whatsoever. It's rush down to its most extreme form, but what separates them from Beastmen and Greenskins is Greenskins and Beastmen are rushing in to do damage. This faction deals some damage, but their main strengths come from necromancy, and with necromancy they're able to use a lot of magic, shadows, death, and vampires. Lore of Vampires allows them to replenish the health of their units to where they're just, or even reanimate the dead, and summing in just constant units. Warriors of Chaos right now are kind of in a weird place. They have a lot of monstrous units. They have one of the weirdest artillery in the game. They have a very strong infantry corps. I think the Chosen, I think, are some of the strongest infantry in the game. The only infantry I think that can really stand toe to toe with Chosen is Greenskin infantry. They're Black Orcs, and that's about it. They're kind of weird. They have a lot of options. They're like weaker versions of the Empire. They have a lot of options for what they can do, but it's not as strong. Finally is the Wood Elves. Wood Elves don't have artillery. Wood Elves are a very frustrating faction to play against. Their hit and run tactics, their scatter their army, All of them have high move speed, just constantly shooting. They have Lure of Life to heal their units, and so you're just taking constant damage while they shoot arrows at you or rush in with their reindeer cavalry. They'll use some monstrous units, specifically not the tree can. Tree men? Is it a tree men or tree can? I think it's tree can, because it's multiple units. Yeah, the tree can, and those things, they just plop them down and they hold the line while their missile units shoot you and fill you with arrows. So currently, as it stands in the meta, the strongest factions in the game are Empire and Vampire counts. The Empire is the strongest just for the fact that it has a counter for every army. It has a build that can counter every army. Yeah, other armies can do that as well, but there's still kind of like the rock, paper, scissors gameplay. There's still tactics and a lot of skill involved, but when you have an army that does everything good, it may not be the best at that thing it does, but it does everything good, that's going to be a strong army. Vampire counts, what makes them strong is they have a build called a Death Star, and what it is you just have this huge blob of infantry that you are constantly healing and can't die, and the only thing stopping it is if you run out of magic or you reach their maximum healing capacity, which is you can only heal a unit for it's double its health bar. So like a unit of Graveguard, very elite infantry, 4,000 health, right? That unit, 60 unit models, could drop down to one model. You could full heal it, bring back all the models, and then you're doing this in an AoE though. So if you have like 10 Graveguard and then just some select monstrous infantry, you can just set and hold and win. Mix that with just a lot of good other magic sources, and with them getting summoning where they don't have missile units, but a common strategy for them now is to have a high mobility caster with a summoning spell, run up to the enemy line, summon zombies and other shit right behind the enemy line that's clogging up their archers, and then running away. So that's kind of the breakdown of the factions in the game itself. I'm going to take it a step further and discuss Chaos. The reason we're discussing Chaos is that is my friend's favorite army, and I'm just kind of giving him some pointers on how to play it. One last generic breakdown is just kind of reading the unit card. So first things first, you have infantry. How infantry currently breaks down in the game is, and Chosen are actually a really good example of this, I don't want to do that, is you have standard infantry, axe, sword, whatever. Standard infantry is just standard infantry. Typically they're shielded, which is shown by this icon, and depending on the color of the shield is the percentage of chance they're able to block everything short of artillery. You have great weapon infantry. What that means is it has armor piercing and it's good against armored units, which we'll discuss those stats. And then you have halberd infantry, or spear infantry, which is effective against charge and it's good against cavalry and monstrous units. Taking it, want to repeat myself a step further, the unit card itself. Up here is pros and negatives of the unit. Here, these units only have pros. I don't think they have any poor leadership. There we go, trolls. You can see right there it says poor leadership. Okay. You have the model count of the unit. You have the hit point total, which you can divide that by that and figure out hit points per model. Armor decides how much damage they take from attacks. So if we go down here to weapon strength, these guys do 31 weapon damage and 11 armor piercing damage, meaning if we had two units of Chosen fighting each other, each attack they make would only do 11 damage, because that's all the armor piercing damage they do. The weapon damage is mitigated by the armor, and this is applied for missiles, and every unit in the game has weapon strength and armor rating. So then we look at our great weapon Chosen, who have dedicated armor piercing, and they're doing 34 armor piercing damage. Makes them great against armor infantry. Leadership, which the lower leadership goes, the worse their stats get and the more likely they are to run from battle. You have speed, which is how fast the unit moves, pretty straightforward. Melee attack and defense. Melee defense is the chance they have of blocking the enemy's attacks with like shields, or dodging it or something like that, to where it's harder for an enemy to hit them in melee. Melee attacks their chance of hitting the enemy. This doesn't play a huge factor, like it makes a difference, but don't think like, oh well, if I throw in a unit of swords against your unit of swords and because your melee attack and defense are higher, I will never hit you and you'll always hit me. It's not the case. You've got to think about it on the scale of 40 units versus 40 units. I mean, will you hit me more and I hit you? Yes. But if I'm hitting you harder, it kind of evens out. And that's something you got to just consider tactic-wise when you're building your army. Last thing is charge bonus. What charge bonus means is they get an increase to their attack and damage whenever when they initially hit an enemy unit if they're running at full speed. Now there's some special icons which we can kind of discuss more as they come up as we play the game, but that's all there is to know that with just basic units. Next up is the lords. So your lord is the general of your army. If your lord dies, your army's morale drops. You can still win without a lord, but it's a lot more difficult. Chaos has quite a large selection when it comes to lords. They have generic lords aplenty, a lot of sorcerers for their 3 schools of magic, and then they have 4 schools of magic. Fuck me. They have generic Chaos Lord, then they have Prince Sigvald the Magnificent, Kolek the Sun Eater, Sarthoriel the Everwatcher, and Archaon. So each of these guys have their own strengths, weaknesses, and abilities, and this will kind of, when you pick the person, it will show over here what they're good at and what they're bad against. Looking at Prince Sigvald, we can buy, because we have a gold limit, we can buy and sell abilities for him and kind of look like this ability increases his charge bonus and weapon piercing damage. If we want to play him offensively, we might want to keep that. Also buy items that, like this one, gives him health regeneration. But it also significantly increases price, because what is this? This costs 221. That's almost a whole unit of infantry. So you have to make decisions like that. When it comes to Chaos itself, Sigvald's your guy you want to use if you think you'll be dueling the enemy lord. Kolek is a giant dragon ogre monster motherfucker, and same with Sarthoriel. He's a giant bird wizard. Both of them are incredibly tough, can take a lot of damage. Though I would suggest Sarthoriel against dwarves and wood elves, and even empire somewhat, because he has a really high missile resistance of 70%, meaning he only takes 30% damage from all missile attacks. You mix that with an armor of 30 and the fact most missile units that are not guns don't do that much damage, means he can just shrug off arrows like they're nothing. Then, and with casters, you see their abilities, and we'll break magic down a bit more when we play an actual game. So then there's heroes, which are weaker versions of lords. Like an exalted hero is a melee specialist, and you can put them on different mounts. Like you can put this one on a manticore, kind of help out with that. And more lores of magic. Typically what you want to do is have a lord, and then you usually want to have 1 or 2 sorcerers, based upon what your opponent is. With Chaos, death is their strongest lore, pound for pound. Metal is a really weak lore of magic right now in the game. Shadows is decent, but only with 1 spell, and that's, I think it's Pit of Shades. Pit of Shades is a great AoE spell that they have access to that can kill a unit almost instantly. Fire is kind of weak as well, but Death or Shadows is usually what you want to use. Death is better if you're going with elite infantry that has, or single target lords. Shadows is more of a debuff, kind of, other than this. Like, it's a weird type to use. Infantry. I noticed you brought a lot of Chaos Warriors and some Chosen. Good choices, but probably not the best. Honestly, Chaos Marauders with great weapons, for their value, like, okay, I can bring 6 of these for 3,000 for the price of bringing 3 units of Chosen. Even Chaos Warriors, not just the Marauders, even Chaos Warriors, which you brought a good number of those, are good infantry, just for their value. Like, these guys do, what is it, 20 armor piercing damage, and they have a high unit count, high model count, meaning they're good for, like, just really good swarm. Typically what you want to do in these games nowadays is, or at least in the Total War games, is you want to bring, as Chaos, you want to bring a front line of Chaos Marauders. They're missile heavy, most missile, unless they're dwarves. If they're dwarves, you want to bring the Marauders with great weapons and just tank the missiles. If they're elves, you'll want to bring the regular Marauders, not the great weapon variety. Then you usually want to have a few units of Forsaken for your flanks. Forsaken are armored, so they can take a decent amount of damage, and they deal crazy fucking weapon damage. Not a lot of armor piercing, but their attack speed and charge bonus is just insane. They can 1v1 non-armored infantry and even some armored infantry if they get the charge. Forsaken are some of the best units in the game. Chaos Warriors are good. Chosen I would almost never bring. Maybe a unit of Chosen if you feel like Chosen with halberds if you really feel like you need to bring it. Now, their cavalry corps. Chariots. Chariots are weird in the game. They take a lot of micromanagement. That means a lot of attention. You can't focus on your other line. You need to kind of hold the line and you focus on your chariots just because how much focus it takes to maintain chariots. However, if you use them correctly, it completely fucks up your opponent's line. Chaos Knights are some of the best cavalry in the game. The variant, for 100 gold more, what do you buy? Less melee attack and defense, but greater weapon strength and charge bonus. The charge bonus is nice, don't get me wrong, but just generic Chaos Knights are very good at fighting other cavalry. So as long as they don't take the full blunt of the initial charge, if you can slow your opponent down some, your Chaos Knights can actually go really well against other cav. They have missile cavalry with the Marauder Horsemen and Marauder Horsemen with throwing axes for an armor piercing variant. These I wouldn't recommend bringing, maybe 1 or 2, but it depends upon your opponent. I wouldn't bring them against vampire counts. I'd honestly only bring them against greenskins and maybe elves. I don't know if these are faster than elf units. That's about it. Monsters. Chaos Warhounds, and Warhounds in general in this game are very strong. The poison variant is definitely worth it. They're very fast. They are incredibly fast with a 95 move speed. And Scaly Skin gives them missile resistance so they can get in. What's good about these is, can these ones Vanguard or is it these? I may be thinking of a different faction, but typically Warhounds are able to Vanguard deploy, meaning they can deploy ahead of the regular army. And usually what you want to do is you want to hide these guys on the flanks, wait for your opponent to move up their infantry corps, and rush these guys in the back line to disrupt artillery, missile units, anything like that. And also charge behind the opponent's back line, and even if there's no missile units, their attacks in the rear deal a lot of damage, deal a lot of shock damage to morale, and they're good at chasing down fleeing enemy units. Poison attacks also are a very good thing in this game. Every time an attack lands, it resets, but it decreases all of those stats you see right there. Speed, weapon damage, missile damage, armor piercing missile damage, vigor. And vigor is tiredness, and we'll discuss that later on. But all in all, it's just a huge weakening of your opponent. Chaos Trolls and Chaos Trolls with armor, not really worth it. Their leadership is abysmal. With 38 leadership, I think that's worse than goblins. We'll go over the greenskins real quick. Yeah, they have worse leadership than goblins. And if you sneeze at a goblin, it will fucking run away. So, I mean, their charge is great. The charge you get with Chaos Trolls and their damage is just fucking ridiculous. Some of them regenerate too, yeah. But they can't last in combat at all. They flee at the first sight of trouble. A better suggestion, and this is situational as at best because Chaos Spawn are expensive, they're unbreakable. They don't deal as much armor-piercing damage flat out, but they deal a lot of damage in general. So they're only doing 40. These guys are doing 63. For a difference of 23 across 6 models, I don't think it's really... I think it's better to keep the Chaos Spawn. They're faster, they're unbreakable, meaning they'll fight until they're all dead. Just strong unit. Chaos Giants. Giants are similar to Trolls in the fact that they can sometimes suffer from leadership issues. Chaos Giant has a lot of leadership though, fuck me. But their attacks are so damn strong. They're good at killing enemy heroes, specialists, lords, generals, everything you need. Or even just a blob of infantry you really don't feel like fucking around with. And Chaos, there for the longest time, Chaos was the only counter pick to Vampire counts. Because Vampire counts had very, not even poor ways, just no ways to deal with monstrous units. So you just pick 2 Chaos Giants and march them down their throat. They had nothing they could do about it. Dragon Ogre and Dragon Ogre Shaygoth. A Dragon Ogre Shaygoth is a single unit. I typically wouldn't buy it unless you wanted to do it for the flavor and think it'd be fun. These, well, I guess it causes terror too, which is really nice. These are anti-large. Well, these one or no. These are anti-large. Does that not have? Yeah. Okay. They're both anti-large, meaning they get bonus damage against large units. So that's cavalry and other monstrous units. So they're a good counter pick if you know your opponent's bringing monsters. The other benefits are the scaly skin, just good damage. They're stronger cavalry. They're just strong cavalry that hits like a truck and forces your opponent to focus on them. Last but not least, Hell Cannon. The Hell Cannon is a weird weapon. It has a range of 420. I think that's comparable with Dwarven, or, well, Empire has the longest range cannons. So an Empire is 450. A Dwarf Cannon is at Grudge, there's 440. 440. No, never mind. So it has shorter range than most factions that bring artillery. Only other artillery I can think of that's ever used. Cygor has a range of 400, so it's longer than a Cygor. Hell Cannon is the slowest firing artillery in the game. It is the least accurate artillery in the game. Has terrible range. But 2 great perks it has. 1, it's unbreakable. That means if your opponent tries to rush in behind you with light cavalry or warhounds, if you reinforce it and keep them from destroying the actual cannon itself, that cannon will keep shooting. Most artillery units have low leadership and will run the second they take a little bit of damage and they'll be broken. This will stay and fight. The other benefit they have is their damage is ridiculous. If they hit a blob, that blob's fucking dead. Other artillery in the game, there's only 2 other artillery pieces I think that deal similar AoE damage, and the Cygor's damage is not nearly as close to the Hell Cannons, and the dwarves have an artillery piece that deals similar AoE damage, but it's half the range. Hell Cannons are very inaccurate though. I would bring 1 most, and that's only if your opponent will be blobbed up. The best way to use Hell Cannons, if you think you have the micro skill for it, is to set your units up and hope they don't need any further babysitting and taking manual control of the cannon and aiming and firing yourself. There's not really a bug or an exploit. There's something you can do with the cannon where you can aim and actually control the shot in the air, and other artillery pieces you can do that with, but you don't have so much control. With the Hell Cannon, you can actually fly the piece and make it go past the range of it, but once again, this takes a lot of focus and micro intensive. So with this unit by unit breakdown, I'm going to show you what I typically use when it comes to when I play Chaos online. I usually don't bring a Hell Cannon. Say in this situation I'm against Beastmen. Beastmen don't have a lot of armor, so I can bring regular Marauders and then Chaos Warriors as backup. And then probably, no, I want Chaos Warriors with halberds, please. 2 of these, couple of those. Look at it, what can I cut? Let's cut some regular Warriors because we have the Forsaken. What else can we do here? I like the Lure of Death. Let's look at spells I can catch. I can get rid of. Do I want them on a horse? Usually you want them on a horse. Arcane Conduit's good. Life Leeching is really good. Aspect of the Dread Knight, giving a unit terror, sometimes useful but not worth it always. Spirit Leech is strong. Doom and Darkness isn't good. Purple Sun isn't good. Fate of Bune is good. Soul Blight's not really that good either. And no items. So that just added about 400. Cavalry against, once again this is hypothetical, against Beastmen. I don't know. I know Beastmen like to bring a lot of monstrous units. I might bring one of these just to harass those a little bit. Probably bring, I don't know. I may bring a Chaos Knight, probably not. They're not going to use artillery typically. They're not going to use range. They're going to be rushing me down. Probably want some Chaos Spawn to help fight them off, or even a Giant, depending on how I want to spend my money. That'd kind of be the army I'd go with, and I'd just play it out from there. And this is the thought process you have to go every time you play this game. You kind of have to do a breakdown and think and look and really figure out what you want to do. This is going to be the end of this video. Remember to rate, like, comment, subscribe. We will see you guys next time. Peace.